Hello everyone, so today we are going to select our predictions for the next phase of Call of the Abyss 6. This is the top 12 all the way through the grand finals. So let's jump right into it. We're going to start off looking at the top 12 and making these predictions first. To start us off, we have GG versus ZT. For this prediction, I am going to select GG as the winner. I am doing this because I think based on their group stage performance, although ZT had a really strong performance, they had a relatively easier group compared to GG. And GG has more tournament experience. We also know that they are a very strong team as well, considering they are the reigning IVL champions from China. So I think I'm going to select GG as the winning team here. Next is FL versus WBG. For this one, I am going to select WBG as the winner here. And this is mainly because I think Fennel didn't do as good in the group stage as I kind of predicted them to. They weren't looking that strong, whereas WBG, I think they have their own issues as well. But in general, I think they're just a little bit more consistent than Fennel. So I'm going to put WBG. Now looking at the next match, we have ACT versus GR. This is a little bit of a gamble. I am going to choose GR for this one. So I think that ACT, I mean, they're known as the 50-50 team, meaning they have a 50% chance of basically winning or losing. Even if the opponent is much more strong or weaker than them, they still tend to do 50-50. So I think this is very much a gamble. GR on the other hand as well, they placed third in their group, so they're kind of mid-ranking in their group. But overall, I think that I am going to gamble on GR being just a little bit more stable than ACT, especially on the survivor side. Now, Zeta versus GW, I think I'm going to stick with Zeta as the choice. I think that GW is just too unstable. They're too inconsistent. They definitely have pulled off some miracles before, and they have really creative gameplay, but I think ultimately Zeta is just much stronger, especially in both Hunter and Survivor faction actually is just much stronger. All right, now moving on to the quarterfinals. And for the first one, Wolves versus GG, this is a pretty tough one because these are both really strong teams. They are both past Call of the Abyss champions, they are both past Identity V League champions, but I think I'm going to go with Wolves for this matchup. And this is mainly because I feel like Wolves did a little bit better during the Call of the Abyss group stage compared to GG. GG's Hunter Xian Wumeng was a little bit unstable. He did pretty well, but he had his moments where he made really bad mistakes. I think Wolves Hunter Alex has been a little bit better than he was last IVL in terms of playing to the meta. So I think that they definitely have a chance in winning this over GG. GG though has a chance as well because if you look back at their stats during last IVL Autumn, they won most of the games against Wolves. So if you're looking at that, you could argue that GG has a higher chance of winning Wolves, but I personally still think that Wolves is maybe a little bit more stable on the Hunter side at the current moment. Now looking at FPXZQ versus WBG, I am going to go with WBG as a winner here. Even though FPXZQ placed first during the group stage in Group A, which is arguably a fairly competitive group, I still think that WBG has a slight edge overall. I think that WBG has strong survivors. I think that their Hunter, well, Hunter side actually, FPXZQ might actually have a little bit more stability in the Hunter side. But ultimately, I think the survivor side is going to be what pushes WBG forward here. And then Axis Wave versus GR, I am going to go ahead and put GR as a winner here. This is kind of a gamble as well because Axis Wave actually did pretty good during group stage. They were first in their group, whereas GR was third in their group, which is right in the middle. However, I think GR had a much more difficult group considering first and second in their group were Wolves and Zeta division. So I think that when you factor that in, GR coming in third makes a lot of sense. And compared to Axis Wave, I think that Axis Wave has a lot more issues to deal with compared to GR. Their survivors got 4 killed twice by the Southeast Asia team ZT. They had some unstable performances against other teams as well. So I think overall, GR's survivors are a little bit more stable. And then for the last matchup on this list, we have Do5 versus Zeta. I'm going to put Zeta as a winner here. I think that you could argue Do5 is the stronger team because they have a strong hunter, arguably the strongest hunter in their hunter Dongxuan. However, I think that their survivors are weaker than Zeta's survivors. They have been improving, but across the board, I don't know if I completely trust that they can stand up against Zeta's hunters. Alf especially is a really strong hunter on Zeta's side, and I think that he's going to give Do5 survivors a pretty hard time. So on the other hand, Do5, very strong hunter in Dongxuan, but Zeta has really strong survivors. So I think basically what I'm trying to say is on both the hunter and survivor side, Zeta is more balanced between the two factions, and I think they can stand up to Do5 better than the Do5 survivors can stand up to Zeta's hunter. All right, moving on to the semifinals, we have Wolves versus WBG. And for this, I am going to pick Wolves. I think overall, Wolves is definitely the stronger team. Their survivors have much stronger teamwork. Not to say that WBG survivors aren't talented, because they certainly are. They are also survivors who have won championships before. But right now, I think Wolves is a stronger team. They have a higher upper limit compared to WBG. And then GR versus Zeta, I am going to go with Zeta as the winner here. I think that GR has a little bit of a less strong gameplay on both Hunter and Survivor sides compared to Zeta, who, like I mentioned, is fairly strong on both Hunter and Survivor sides. And their Hunter especially, I think, can hold up pretty well against GR survivors, whereas I'm not convinced that GR's Hunter is going to be able to overcome Zeta's survivor team. So that's why, again, I've put Zeta first for the same reason. Now, looking at the finals here, we have WBG versus GR. And for this, I am going to go ahead and select... actually, this is pretty hard. I'm going to go with WBG. I think that WBG's hunter, like I mentioned earlier, he's pretty much a tie hunter, but he is pretty consistent, whereas GR's hunter could go either way. GR's hunter definitely has his moments, super rich, but I don't know if I would necessarily say he's more stable than YMM from WBG. I think WBG may have a slight hunter advantage there, and then in terms of survivors, I think that WBG survivors may have a slight edge against GR survivors as well. I'm not totally convinced about that, but I think that based on what we've seen, this makes the most sense to me. And then for the championship match, we have Wolves versus Zeta. So for this, I think both are really strong teams. If they made it to the finals, then really either team could win this. It's really hard to choose, but I'm going to ultimately go with Wolves. I think that Zeta and Wolves are going to be pretty evenly matched, to be honest. If we think back to last year in Call of the Abyss 5, we saw Wolves versus SST as the finals, and as we know, several of the SST members actually joined Zeta after SST disbanded last year. So it's very similar to the matchup we had last year in Call of the Abyss Championships, and that was a very close match as well. We saw that even though I keep saying Wolves survivors are super strong, we saw that Zeta's hunter Alf really managed to give Wolves survivors a run for their money. And on the other hand, Alex, Wolves hunter, did really well against Zeta survivors for the most part. So there were definitely moments though where Zeta survivors got the best of him. So I think in the end, yeah, they're definitely pretty evenly matched. And I think if they do go to championships, either of them could win. They're definitely going to put on a really good show for us. Ultimately, going to stick with Wolves as my pick. Alright, so next, let's take a look at the results predictions. And as you can see, I've already filled these out, but I'll still go through it with everyone. So for character, The first category, this is the hunter with the most hits in a single match. And for this, I chose Bonbon because Bonbon's bomb chips also count as hits, so I think he'll be getting a lot of hits. Number 2, the most used character. For this, I chose Mercenary. And this is because I figured that characters like Mercenary will probably get banned less than characters like Priestess and the Seer, and potentially Antiquarian as well. So I decided to go with Mercenary for most used character. For the survivor with the longest containment time in a single match, I think Prospector or Antiquarian are good picks, but I decided to go with Prospector because we saw some really long Prospector containment times in the group stage. And then the most banned character, I decided to go with Seer since I think he is the most banned character in the group stage for sure. For the contestants, let's look at this next. The survivor contestant with the most pallet hits. For this, I think the keyword is most, and this is the most across all of the matches, right? So I think that the team that plays the most matches probably has the most highest chance of getting the most pallet hits. And that's why I chose somebody from Zeta for this. Based on my predictions, I have Zeta going from the top 12 all the way to the finals. And that means they'll play more matches than any other team, including Wolves, because Wolves starts from the top 8 instead of the top 12 like Zeta. So based on my predictions, they'll be playing less matches potentially than Zeta will. And Kazuneko is pretty much just a random pick at this point. Now the survivor contestant with the most escapes, for this I went along with the same thought process, choosing somebody from Zeta since I think they'll play the most matches, and I decided to go with Mochi since Mochi tends to play Rescuer a lot, so I think he'll get more escape opportunities compared to players who play a lot of Kiters and Decoders. And then the hunter contestant with the most terror shocks, this is kind of going along with the same logic, even though I don't think Alf necessarily gets the most terror shocks on average. I think that, again, Zeta will play a lot of matches, so Alf will just get the most opportunity to get more terror shocks than other hunters. And then the last one is the hunter contestant with the most eliminations on average. For this one, I once again went with Alf. I did take a quick look at who Zeta is going to be playing based on my predictions. We have GW, who I think will definitely be manageable for Zeta to deal with. We have Dole 5, and Dole 5 tends to have a little bit of a weaker survivor side, so I think again they're manageable for Zeta to deal with on the hunter side. Zeta's hunter is going against GR survivors, I think that's manageable as well. They'll have a hard time against Wolf survivors, but looking back at Call of the Abyss 5, Alf did pretty well against the Wolf survivors as well, so I think that Alf does have a good chance in getting the most eliminations on average. That's why I ended up putting Alf. But it's really a gamble because if you're looking at on average, this means that hunters who don't play a lot of matches could still potentially have a very high average kill rate. So I would say, it could be a very strong hunter like Domex as well. It could be a hunter that we don't traditionally think of as that strong, but managed to get a lot of 4 kills against a weaker survivor team opponents. It could be really anybody. Let's look at the clubs next, and here we have the club with the most dungeon escapes. Wolves is well known for their dungeon escapes, so I decided to just go ahead and put Wolves here. As far as the club with the most 4-player eliminations, going along with the thought process I explained previously, I think that Zeta makes the most sense here, especially since Alf is a pretty strong hunter. In terms of the club that completed the most 4-player escapes, I still put Wolves here. Wolves, again, are known for their really strong survivor team and getting 4-player escapes, and they also play a decent amount of matches compared to the other teams that we have. So at least according to my predictions, if things go according to my predictions, I think that this could very well be Wolves. And then the last one here is the club that used the most characters. And for this, I think that looking at the group stage, we saw ZT play the most characters out of all teams. However, based on my predictions, we have ZT being eliminated after playing the first match against GG. So that means that they don't really have as much of a chance to play that many characters this time compared to the group stage. That's why I think it's going to be a different team this time, and I decided to go with Zeta. Again, same thought process as before. Zeta will play the most matches so that they have the chance to play the most characters out of all the teams. If things go according to my predictions, that's the big caveat here. And then for the matches, let's take a look at this. So the duration of the shortest match, based on previous Call of the Abyss matches, it seems like the shortest matches tend to be around 4 minutes. However, I think that getting under 4 minutes is still pretty rare, so I still chose over 4:10. But I believe in Call of the Abyss 5, we actually had something under 4:10. So basically, choose this one based on what you think is the most likely. But for me, I definitely think over 4:10 is the most likely. It's just that it could happen to be under 4:10 as well. You never really know. Containment time in the match with the longest containment time, I decided to go with between 300 and 350, and this is because in the group stage this year, we did see kites that were longer than 300 seconds. However, I think getting above 350 is just really, really rare, so I decided to go with the middle option. For the number of characters used in the group stage and the finals, for this one I chose under 35, and this is because looking at ZT, who played the most characters in the group stage, they played 25 characters total, and that's a lot of characters already. But I do think that it's going to be greater than 25 because you have to factor in the other teams as well, right? This is the number of characters across all the teams in the group stage and the finals. So I think that there's going to be definitely some more numbers added onto that, but to get over 35 is pretty ambitious. It's possible, but I think that under 35 is the best bet, especially because the next option between 35 and 38 is a pretty narrow range. So that's why I decided to go with under 35. And then last but not least, the highest number of knockdowns in a single match. For this one here, I chose fewer than 14 times, fewer than 16 times. And that's because 16 times is basically on average 4 knockdowns per survivor. And even if you factor in the harassing that might be going on, the fact that hunters might have to knock down survivors multiple times due to harassing or slugging for the 4 kill, I still think that 4 knockdowns per survivor is pretty ambitious there. So I think it's most likely going to be less than 16 times. All right, well, that concludes our predictions, and hopefully this was interesting for everybody to watch, and we'll see how this goes. Basically, I do have to add in a disclaimer here that this is not meant to be a guide, so invest your apples at your own risk, and good luck to everybody. Most importantly, make sure to have fun because Call of the Abyss is one of the most exciting times of the year when it comes to Identity V tournaments. All right, well, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you next time.